Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Unfiltered podcast. And this one is interesting because Cindy's on a rant about some of the GG items and what could possibly change in the new year, especially since they are the items that are going to be used for data collection for outcomes. And it was interesting. We were discussing this because I'm not as much into the details of it, but it's not. This one's not a this is how you do it K&K type, let's stay accurate and follow the rules 100%. This is more of a nuanced, you need to be thinking about this type of podcast, but it's super important that we understand that what we put in those GG items is going to be compared to what we've historically put in GG items. And if we have a big sea change, and Cindy said this a million times, I will say it again, that if everybody in GG items all of a sudden can't roll over because now they're being counted, you're going to get what you get. So just be aware. This is part of that warning of how you should look at some of the items in GGs in this, particularly in this particular podcast, some of the answers. And so, Cindy, you had some issues with the non-attempted. You had some committees that you're serving on that you've been discussing this. So I'm going to let you have the floor. I have some questions, but I wanted you to go ahead and get it out.
Well, it is about getting it out of my system because I've spent over 20 years of my life teaching and training about OASIS. And I've always tried to stay within the guardrails of here is the discipline neutral data collection document. Here's the official guidance. Here's official Q&As, that we have to make peace with that. We need to follow and understand the directions, and that sometimes feelings, clinical judgment, hearing something you thought you heard at a conference once and perpetuating it can put us down the wrong path. So we always need to stay within the guidance. But there's one element where I just can't hold my opinion in anymore. And I know I can't put it in a traditional webinar. I touch on it in GG related webinars, but this whole issue of the activity not attempted codes, I just got to get it off my chest. Okay. Because we know when the GGs came in, as Sherry alluded to, they were not designed for home health specifically. They were designed to be the ability to measure outcomes, not just from agency to agency, but to look at us versus skilled nursing facilities, inpatient rehab, and long-term acute care hospitals. They have, particularly when you look at the SNFs and IRFs, the exact same questions. And I have harassed people historically on the SNF side saying, how did you let this happen? Why does it say 150 feet? There's so much baggage around 150 feet in home care in the daggone mailbox. How did you let this happen? But it is. And it even says in a corridor, and it's like, okay, we all know that this has some facility nuance on it. But we inherited the same language they had, and the whole Impact Act train, as it were. Home health has always been the caboose with this stuff. So they released it in those other post-acute settings. We got it last. Those other settings have been getting their outcome data on GGs for a while now. And unless I have totally missed something, I haven't seen ours. Home health hasn't seen outcomes that are GG measures. We've seen our star ratings, care compare, all that other stuff, but not the GGs. And so they convene groups of post-acute providers altogether, not just home health, but we've got SNF, IRF, and LTAC in present, and they're presenting data, looking at what's been going on with the GGs in these settings. And what jumped out to me, Sherry, is here's the IRF data, SNF data, LTAC data, and home health, blank. Where is it? Well, we're still analyzing it. We're still looking at it. So we know it's been percolating somewhere. We haven't been getting a lot of outcome information. But then we saw in the final rule going into 2025, we're going to get this discharge function score. And we have to realize that's already going on in other elements of post-acute care. And part of it is like, okay, some people are happy. Yay, the goals column in GG 130 and GG 170 is going away. Okay, I'm not sure that's a positive. I think it would be better if the clinician who was actually working with the patient and following the current guidance in 2024 of considering length of stay and comorbidities and all of this patient motivation, put down a reasonable goal. But I think part of it is, in our experience as auditors and doing outsourced OASIS review, is that there was a propensity that everybody was going to be a 6 at discharge. They are going to be independent and everything. Didn't matter what was wrong with them, how long we had them. It's like a whole bunch of sixes. And it's like, did we set up false expectations? So we kind of got that taken out of our hands in lieu of this, we're going to calculate it for you, which led to, okay, so how are you going to do that? Well, I'm not a statistician and I don't want to bore getting into the details of the math, but I think we can follow the logic of they're going to look at how we score them, run it through Magic Medicare Math, and it's going to give you an expected performance in those 10 measures at discharge. Keeping in mind, it is not all the 130s and 170s. Okay, so what on earth does that whole preamble have to do with me being annoyed and the activity not attempted codes? Well, if you think about it, if I'm going to calculate an improvement, so if my patient started out at a 4 of supervision or touching assistance and ended up a 6, we can say, wow, they got 2 points better. I understand that, yay. If the patient started out a 5 and ended up a 3, all right, that's 2 points the other direction. But we understand that when we look at 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1 being dependent as those responses. But they gave us the activity not attempted codes. And I think there's some positives about that in terms of there are times where the patient simply cannot complete this activity. And we can understand situations where the patient refuses or the environment is just limiting this activity. And we've struggled a bit, but I think we're getting better about the difference between a 9 and an 8-8. But here's the problem. The codes they chose. Let's just pick one. Patient refused is a code 7. Wait a second. So dependent is 1, independent is 6, and patient refused is a 7. So how do I calculate a change? Because if the patient refused at a 7 at start of care, which means they didn't do the activity, and we ended up at 6, wow, they actually are independent at discharge. But a 7 to a 6 is a what? A 1-point decline. Yeah. Now you get real crazy and say, okay, you had a 7, you made 9 for not applicable, a 10 for environmental, and then you jump to 88 for one of them. So wait a second. So if I choose 88 that says this person cannot complete the activity now, but they could prior to this illness, exacerbation, or injury, and then at discharge they ended up a 4, we know that's an improvement. Couldn't do it. Now they're doing it with supervision, but trying to do the math, that's an 84-point change. Okay.
In the wrong direction.
Yeah. So what happened when they tried to use these not attempted codes is they ran into a math problem of what do we do with them to make them align now back into the flow of 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Well, the suggestion had been made, what if you just turned all of the non-attempted to 0 for your math? Because basically it means they weren't attempted. There's various reasons, but a 0 would level it. Well, there's debate about that because there's a big difference between I can't do it now and I could do it before, and I can't do it now and I haven't been in a very long time. Because the ability to improve somebody who hasn't been able to do that in a decade is not likely, versus they could do it before. So that whole make it all the same level thing didn't work. Then it became, well, what we're going to do is we're going to take these codes and we're going to look at the rest of your assessment. So how you assessed other functional areas, other risk adjustment things, and we're going to take the non-attempted number and convert it into one of those in that 0 to 6 scale. Now, sitting there is going, wait a minute, hold on, let me understand. So you're going to use a computer to go through my assessment to change my not attempted to potentially an attempted code. Why don't you just let me do that then? I mean, I'm the clinician. I'm the one seeing the patient. No, because we need to use the non-attempted codes. One thing we have to understand is as an industry, we have been pretty darn heavy users of not attempted codes. When you look at that stacked up, that piece of information we have been able to see, not the outcomes, but just use of these ANA codes is pretty high. Where am I going with this? Well, I am frustrated about the math. I think that it's weird, it's odd They're going to do what they're going to do. They explain it all on these technical things, but there's concern.
I have a question about the math. Is that do they have the same issue in the other settings though? If they had the 8-8, they have the same math issue in the other settings. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So in other words, not only are we the caboose, but to say, stop, we want it different. It's too late. It's already, the train left the station and other elements of post-acute care. So us being happy early on with the Impact Act that, oh, everybody else gets it first, we have time. Part of that means they've done it, they've started to refine it, and we just got to the starting line. So what I'm concerned about is, yes, I'm frustrated about this mathematical conversion. Is it going to change it because I'm annoyed? No. Okay. Why am I concerned? Because going into 2025, I am hearing repeatedly, don't use the ANA codes. People are telling agencies are telling clinicians, don't use them anymore. Because if there's this weird math thing, then pick something always between 6 and 1. Don't use them. My concern is that we have a history of utilizing them. And if we suddenly never touch them in 2025, you don't think that's a little suspicious? I mean, we keep ending up in this behavioral adjustment discussion.
Hashtag behavioral adjustment.
So now nobody can roll and the attempted codes all fell off the planet. It's like, okay, hold up. Because I don't think the solution is to completely avoid them. Do I think we need to revisit them? Absolutely. Because to learn how often they're being used doesn't make sense. How am I, and we've seen this during our auditing and outsourcing activities, you answered, for example, 1860, the ambulatory question, with a 3, and that was well supported in your documentation, that this individual needs to be at least supervised while they're up and walking. Okay, what's nice in the GGs is we can differentiate. Is it supervision? Is it more assistance? But now I get over to the ambulatory related GGs and I'm looking at a bunch of not attempted codes. Wait a minute. They couldn't even walk 10 feet. What?
That's the level of dissonance we had where people were just ignoring the GG items because they weren't part of the payment calculation, Cindy. If now that they're beginning, and I'm going to ask another question. In the other settings, are they doing a discharge calculation, or are they allowing the clinicians and the let's say in the skilled nursing, the MDS coordinator to choose a discharge goal for these patients still?
You're still charged with, as we will be, answering those questions at discharge. The issue is, from a value-based perspective, they're going to look at your final answer against what they projected.
So, are they projecting that for the other settings as well? Ah, okay.
So you collected at start, they do magic to it, give you the projected target. You go out and do your discharge. They look at the discharge against this. If you hit it or exceeded it, yay you. If you don't, therein lies the problem.
But the trick is, do you know what that discharge calculation is when you do the discharge? Or is that on the data side?
It seems to be greatly dependent on who you use, EMR-wise, data vendor-wise, scrubber-wise. Some of the scrubbers are saying they are going to be able to give you that information because they have the technical specs on the calculation. So we're going to see some of that, which I know where you're going. If I see the target, then I'm going to do the discharge and make sure I meet or exceed it. Okay, so now we're back to core Cindy Krafft. Every time point, every item, every time, follow the guidance, do your best, make sure it reflects the patient. But I understand the temptation to say, if they're going to impugn numbers anyway out of my non-attempted, then let's not use them. I think we just have to be paying more attention. I think, as you said, Sherry, when GGs came into play and they don't affect reimbursement and they're not directly affecting PDGM anytime soon, they're not stars, they're not care compare, that they kind of coasted. And as long as there were things answered and we had a couple goal ones in there minimum, then we met requirements, and we talked to agencies that didn't really review them, didn't really think education was that big of a deal, just read the instructions. Mm-hmm. We saw when the rules started changing or proposed to change, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Well, that may be the culprit into how many non-attempted codes just slid through and people didn't. And how I know, and I believe a lot of clinicians don't understand the non-attempted codes, is because they'll put down a 9 at the start of care saying this individual can't do it now and couldn't do it before. And then the goal is 6. Hold up, miracle worker. That doesn't make sense to me. Okay. Can't do it now. Hasn't done it in forever. And you're going to get them to independent with a 2-week plan of care. I think you meant 8-8, not 9. So
Right.
that's one issue. The other is it really should be presented to the clinician. Please vet all other possible options before choosing a non-attempted code.
Right.
And that is in line with what the guidance says. The guidance says repeatedly, look at these other codes first. This should not be your go-to, your starting point. It should be, I understand 654-321, also knowing that one dependent can be, yep, you're doing everything for them. But if 2 people help with the transfer, 2 people are helping with the ambulation, even if the second person is just giving verbal cues, that's a 1. That's a dependent person, which this is, again, discipline neutral data collection. But if I absolutely cannot use those, then I need to intentionally and thoughtfully use not attempted codes. So I think as we revisit this issue, again, agencies need to not go with the don't touch them or you're going to burst into flame strategy. Okay. But let's not overuse them. Let's really look at what the guidance tells us, especially in many of the self-care related ones. It talks about observation is preferred, but you can talk to the patient, the caregiver, other disciplines involved from a collaboration perspective to say, okay, based on what we're seeing, how they do other things, how they dress their upper body, what do we think about lower body? It gives us those opportunities.
Sure.
But it's also clear, particularly in the ambulation ones, that if the person cannot complete the distance listed, you have to go to a non-attempted code. So if we're trying to do that 150 feet and the patient gets to 130 and has to sit down, the directions tell us they didn't do 150 feet. So it's that mix of following the directions at times is going to have me use a non-attempted code. I know the non-attempted code is going to end up in the imputed math of whatever to make it work out for this discharge function score. But the situation, I think we need to understand, we still have to report correctly. That you can't just now make everybody fit between 6 and 1. You can't. If they completely go away, this looks suspicious. But I'm repeating myself on purpose. Please revisit that the clinicians understand what these are. They're not overusing them. They're not just saying, well, the patient refused. Well, they refused this one thing, but you assessed many other things. You talked with them. You believe they have this ability. There are multiple GGs that say, use your clinical judgment and pick an answer. Okay. So this, just take the refusal, take this, make sure we understand, because they shouldn't be overused. But much like rolling, Sherry, if you're sitting in 2025 and all the ANA codes went away, I don't know. I got nothing.
Well, I think CMS is reasonable. I think CMS is reasonable on this. They expect that there's going to be a change in behavior when the focus goes on the GGs. They really do expect it. They don't expect it to go to the other end, which some people might do. Because again, I want to reiterate another thing that you said. Right now, this moment, the GG items have no implication on your PDGM scoring. They right now they are about outcomes, and value-based purchasing has a percentage deduction, but that's based on data from 2 years ago. So if you're going to, and I say that is what's going to happen in 2025 as far as your payment adjustment is the data from 2023, correct?
Yes.
And then
I mean, it's a phase-in issue. It's not like they're only going to look at your performance right that second. It's going to be phased in over time. But what I don't want people to lose sight of, Sherry, is yes, we see 10 of them, only 10 of them, pulled into VBP. And the reason it's only those 10 has to do with consistency throughout post-acute care. But the rest of GG absolutely matters, because we don't know what other outcomes they're going to start looking at between us and SNF and IRF. for us in long.
And you're creating your data for the next year, and as the phase in, that's going to become even closer. Yeah, you're creating the data. So understanding that really importantly, and if you've been doing them wrong, I'm going to give people a pass right now.
Right.
If you've been doing it incorrectly due to lack of education, then spell that out. Write yourself an action plan that you noticed this when you were reviewing for 2025. You noticed that you had a high number of not attempted codes, and this is the education you provided to improve the accuracy of the data. If somebody came and did an assessment or did a survey and you had that information available, CMS, they allow for mistakes to be made, but you have to identify them and you have to set a plan of correction. And so I think I'm going to echo what you're saying, Cindy, from the agency ownership. Write that down, form a committee, get something in writing that says, hey, we discovered this. This is how we're changing it to improve the accuracy of our data. I think that that's something that's probably needed.
Because I think the concern, if we don't, so let's say I agree with you, this could have been, I just really didn't put a lot of thought into it. I'm realizing now I probably should have. I want to make sure it's accurate. Having that in place and proof that that was the driver holds up better than it looks like it's a reimbursement decision.
Right.
That I did it because of VBP. VBP may have been the wake-up call we needed to do GG better, but it's not. Don't touch non-attempted codes because we don't want our reimbursement screwed up. Because what if the impute number is too high and now we miss it and all that? No, okay. I'm trying to do the right thing. And if I realize that we need more education and I'm showing we did education because we're focused on accuracy, I agree with you. That says I understand the situation and this is what I did to fix it.
Right.
And I'm just concerned with the quick fix. Nobody can roll. Nobody can feed themselves. Or now we're only going to pay attention to those 10. I don't even like those 10. You got me definitely riled up today, Sherry. I don't even like those 10 because what happened to bathing? What happened to dressing? I mean, those are critical things that we've been spending a whole lot of energy getting people stabilized or improved in those settings, thanks to all the other measures. And you're telling me it just fell out of the GGs? But that doesn't mean I don't care about those, because they're still, and I know they are, they look at all of those performance things across those settings. So I can now not just become super fancy at 10, never touch an ANA code on those 10, but I use it on the others because, that's not part of VBP.
They don't matter. They don't matter.
It's really just about doing it right. And Sherry, I know I asked for this podcast because it's driving me crazy. And others may say, she's just nuts. I mean, we've said OASIS manual under her pillow. Maybe she needs to, move it away for a couple of days. But it's just something that having the opportunity, the privilege, I'm going to say the privilege to participate in panels and committees and discussions. There's times you sit there and you just want to go, I want to take our industry and just shake it and say, this is what happens when we think we can just quick fix something, when we can make patients look sicker because then it'll make us look better. And we can do this because that'll do that. And then it becomes codified in consulting advice, codified in education. Yes, do this, make this. And it's like they have so much data. And data, again, with the GGs, we haven't been looking at our outcomes coming back from CMS on those on a national level. They still have it. They still know what we've been doing. Mm-hmm. So we have to make sure it's right every time. And when they add new questions, thankfully, we only get one new question in 2025. Answer it accurately. Start to change the tide. I don't like whatever. Answer the question accurately. Every time we get new questions, answer those accurately. Change the question, answer it accurately. That's all we can do, or else this stuff comes back to haunt us.
What is it they say? The definition of wisdom is being able to predict things based on factors that are going to happen down the road. I think that our experience, Cindy, in this industry, now you for almost 30 years and me for like 28 years, we've seen it happen so many times that it's like, don't do it this time. Do not do it this time. If we can stop that faction of, like you said, consultants and quote unquote experts that give you a quick, happy, shiny new object that you can use that's going to fix everything. Just be aware that you need to look at that stuff cautiously and always compare it to what the rules are, and always lean on accuracy. Accuracy is not going to get you in trouble. Accuracy is the champion of all time. right? It's the champion
Right.
of everything. So
And one other piece I'd add, Sherry, is part of that is, yes, educating the clinician thoroughly, but it's also operationally keeping an eye on whoever's reviewing these records, because it could be a well-intentioned internal or external reviewer that thinks that they've heard the same thing. So they're telling clinicians, no, not a non-attempted code. No, not a non-attempted code. I think it should be a 3. I think it should be a 2. Change it to a 2 in some sort of, we're helping you out by getting rid of the non-attempted. Be cautious there, because we all have to be on the same page. If I, as a reviewer, look at this assessment and say, you really didn't need to use the not attempted, consider this other, from a place of accuracy, that's fine. But I think we could have some QA activities, again, leaning into the I'm being helpful and changing people's not attempted in ways that they shouldn't be.
but I want to be clear with our listeners. Cindy and I are big believers that home health is unique. It is a unique setting. It does not match skilled nursing and IRF. They have facilities. They have brick and mortar. Home health has a different brick and mortar, and sometimes it's fiberglass and plastic that people are living in. And I think that this attempt by the Impact Act of 2005, I believe it is, the attempt to have a uniform set of data that follows a patient through different settings is a noble attempt. But I think that the absolute inability of them to realize how unique and different home health is still being figured out. And I'm not sure that they're going to figure it out with this tool. So stay tuned. And if you have any questions about anything we've discussed here, please reach out to us. You can go to knkhelp.com and hit the contact button and get to Cindy directly, get to me directly. And we're just here to help. And Cindy, do you have any closing thoughts? Because we went longer on this than I thought we would. And I think it's important. It's very specific, but it's extremely important that people understand what's going on. Did you have any closing thoughts?
Well, no. If you do want to have a more sane Cindy Krafft education about GG items, we have various options at K&K. And thank you, Sherry, for tolerating my very specific rant today. But I just really, again, we love home health. We love the benefit and what we provide to our patients in the home. And these kind of things can end up making us look bad, make them question what we do, give us another payment reduction. And we'd love to just really turn the tide, because like you said, accuracy doesn't get you in trouble. It's trying to massage it. And we know the bad behavior of a few can mess it up for the rest of us, but that really doesn't change the fact we need to be committed to that level of compliance.
Amen. And thanks for doing what you guys do. And please be safe out there.